Hey, welcome everybody. It's Amy from Ask a Christian, and Mark is here in the background too. I have the title slide for today's presentation. We're talking about Jesus miracles and potentially magic. And I want to run through a couple of our announcement slides for you. And I do want to apologize to those of you who are new and you're getting our countdown emails. I totally forgot to turn those off. And so it triggers an auto thing counting you down. In case you were confused, we are going strong. This is 4 out of 8 in our seminar. We will be doing 4 more starting next Thursday. And you'll notice these don't have titles. It's because Mark and I are very indecisive, both of us. But starting next Thursday, we'll do 4 again and ending on Sunday the 15th. And we want to call your attention to a couple things. If you do us the favor of registering, then you will get study printables. Now, I don't have the one ready for today. I would like to blame Mark, but the truth is I just kind of got up late today, and I've taken it back over after hiring a designer. So if you want
That's a sign of a strong leader. A sign of a strong leader will take the fall for something that she's not responsible for. It's not her fault. Well, it's on me.
Thank you, Mark. I know, like, I could have done it, but it would have been haphazard. So as you know, if you go to this link, then you can sign up, then we can send you the printables before each one. And I will get that one out to you. Also, there are prizes. It says nightly, but every time we have one of these, we have some fun prizes. I've collected, from going to Marshall's and Home Goods and some of my favorite stores. And even if you're drawn, your name will go back in the drawing for the grand prize, which is that magic looking s'mores maker up at the top. It's really cool. You can have s'mores in your home or camping without starting a fire. It's safe for kids and just a really cool, entertaining thing to have. So make sure you register and you'll get prizes. And then also want to highlight my friend Chad, a creative mastermind, has been doing first century sponsorships. So if you are a small business owner, small business owner, I should say, in California Bay Area, or if you are a nationwide chain and you work somewhere and you have permission to let us do that for and to your company, we do have one spot left for next week. So if you look under this video, either on YouTube or Facebook, you'll see a link that takes you to a couple of questions. We just need some info from you. And we would love to give that last spot to you for free, just because it's fun for us and a benefit to you. Now, lastly, coming in spring 2021, we will have it'll be a book club. I mean, it is a Bible study, but we'll be going through a book called The Road. And you don't have to purchase the book, but if you wanted to, it would be good for you. You can find it on Amazon even right now. But it's just kind of a modern look at some things. It's not so much for churchy people. It's a fresh perspective. Of course, churchy people will enjoy it. But if you want to just have a different outlook, something that resonates with people who are not necessarily religious, which is kind of where I'm trying to head in my life, is gaining different perspectives. You want to check that out. So that's enough announcements for now. Again, we are starting off this program calling it the Magic Word. And guys, stay tuned. We'll do drawings and a commercial with Chad Reed a little bit later. And Mark, kicking it to you, my friend.
All righty. Thank you, Amy. Good morning, everybody. As Amy said, this is our 4th presentation. We started off on Friday talking about how we know what we know. And I'm sorry, that was Tuesday. And then we moved from there with a couple of others. I encourage you to go and check them out if you have not yet. And so today we will get right into our presentation. And so typically when anybody looks at the life of Jesus, people can really accept great philosopher. There have been a lot of sayings attributed to Jesus, and no one, even the historian that has nothing at all for religion or Christianity, they would say Jesus was at least a great philosopher. People who, when they study history, can say that Jesus was a culture changer. We talked about that yesterday, as how he was a societal norm and the ways that just pushed back in culture and stuff that Jesus, would do to make things, to further things along. And so we know Jesus was also a respected teacher, whether from his day or today, outside of the Christian religion. So great philosopher, culture changer, respected teacher. But one area that we would like to into issue is if we go with miracle work. I mean, when we look at the laws of nature, as we understand them, and when we look at just, as far as laws of science, it's like, can we really believe that somebody did these things that are attested to them? And so today, that's kind of what we want to look at. If we can see, how did these stories come about, and are they believable? Are they even provable? Whatever else. Or if not provable, are they at least more likely than not to have occurred? And we have the magic with selecting names. So starting off, we have people back then, and as far as looking at the culture of the time from Palestine in that era, most skeptics sometimes suggest that telling stories about Jesus's miracles, it reflected, or it reflects, a common practice in the ancient world, where people would attribute to their favorite teacher or prophet, certain abilities. And the implication is that ancient people, or at least those who were, I would say, less educated, that they didn't take these stories seriously. That they were like, look, this is just what you guys do because you had favorite teacher, prophet, leader, and you want to show the impact that they had on people's lives. And to do that, you want to sit here and come up with all kinds of stories about them. It's a life-changing influencer. So you have skeptics and atheists, such as David Hume, and even some liberal theologians, such as Rudolf Bultmann, who will frequently suggest that if Christians can't accept the accounts of other miracle workers in the ancient world, then it's unfair to accept the accounts about Jesus. And that seems like a reasonable argument. We can't pick and choose who we want to say did a mighty deed or a great work, and we can choose to say, whether or not was, evil or good, or whatever else. It seems as though we're being biased. And as Amie has already said initially, we're trying to remove as much bias as possible. We all obviously come with a bias when we can. So we have, skeptics on one side of the equation, along with liberal theologians. And so on the other side, though, there's an argument that such claims, as far as people doing magic deeds or doing mighty works, that it actually was not uncommon in that world at that time. And the gospel portrayal of Jesus as a miracle working or divine man, it's argued has its parallels. And so it's like, look, this isn't anything bad. This is what a lot of people see. But the problem with this is that it goes too far, because it says this happened all the time. And so, we see examples, certain scholarly works. Or go on.
I wanted to interrupt for two reasons. One is because I think my internet's lagging, but Mark is looking pixelated. And Mark, am I pixelated to you?
No, you look very clear.
I look clear? Okay. And it may be yours then.
And actually.
Okay. Well, anyway, I just want to apologize for that and say that, I can only turn off my camera. So Mark, I don't know if you want to turn off your camera, and I can just put a slide up and we can just do audio. I don't know if that will help, but we'll do that for now. And then I wanted to welcome Bud in the comment section. And Bud joined us on our first night, and we were talking about the certainty of history. And I just wanted to recap that. But thank you. It was a good reminder, because some people might not have joined us in the first night. So we are looking at this from, there are a few points of certainty that are, there's so many attestations, so many grand sweeping patterns we talked about of things that so many people said it, saw it, wrote about it, that we can be fairly certain that those things happened. And as those things, as the nucleus, things that surround them, although they do reduce uncertainty. And you're right, bud. At some point it comes down to what do you believe, but just wanted to clarify that for those who might be joining us for the first time. When Mark is talking about these things, we're talking about his reputation as a healer and miracle worker, not just from inside the church. So that's where we have the overwhelming amount of writing, but also other historical sources. Anyway, back to you, Mark. Thank you for giving me pause to maybe catch some people up or some first timers up.
Oh yes, no worries. Thank you. Okay, so we have lots of examples, and thanks for that backdrop. So we have some people who will say that, like I said, liberal theologians and skeptics. Look, if you say it for one, you gotta say it for all. You have some people who say, and they say it could not have happened. You have some people who are saying, look, this is a contrail. We read popular books about Alexander the Great, or we read about stories of people being raised from the dead, as told by a man named Apollonius, or stories about resurrected deities that were told in ancient mystery religions. And so these stories about healings and exorcisms are told about a host of magicians in the ancient world, and stories about stupendous miracles were also told about Jewish holy men. So an increasing number of other scholars, however, find that historical evidence that Jesus actually performed something. Those stories sound, they sound fake, being, raised from the dead or doing mighty deeds. We'd be like, no, that's not, we can't accept that. That's Greek mythology, that's Greek myth. But historians have said that that there's historical evidence that Jesus actually performed something like healings or something like exorcisms.
Right.
And
so
that the evidence is
that's going to be a big difference, right? I mean, anyway, I don't want to stop you, but
no, you're right. No, you're right.
Okay. Yeah. And let's slow down a little bit because and recap some of the things you said, because they're super important. And I want to bring up what Bud has said. I'll flash it up here on the screen. If David Copperfield traveled back to first century Middle East, he would be the Messiah. Let's keep that in mind as we go forward, Mark. That's a really fun thing to consider. Or Chris Angel.
No, absolutely.
A better name for it.
No, absolutely. That, I think, Bud, that is a fair to raise, and we'll see if we can come to those same conclusions by the end. But yeah, he would, at the very least, he would be special. We know that for sure. So
yeah.
So what we see with Jesus is that, as far as people saying that there's too strong of evidence to simply reject what has happened, and like we said, but they continue that this extraordinary power was not necessarily unique to Jesus. And while it's foreign for us today, outside of the lives like a Chris Angel or David Copperfield, to be like, hey, this, what magicians, trick of the eye or trick in the hand, sleight of hand. In other parts of the world, people, do accept, outside of the West, certain manifestations, I would say, of ability. So just to break down, there are a couple of groups that people have where they argue, okay, Jesus is not unique. And so I just want to look at those. And so the first group would be ancient magicians. So one area where people have tried to say, okay, Jesus is not all that unique, or that they try to draw a parallel, is that there was the widespread practice of magic back at this time. So I like what Bud has said as far as David Copperfield or Chris Angel.
Yeah, like illusions and sleight of hand has been around since anyone could make a buck off it, right? The whole is Absolutely. The pea under this cup or this cup. That's kind of like it's a funny trope. You see it in a lot of movies, but yeah, that was nothing new.
No, absolutely. Now so while there are lots of people that believe in at this time that believed in magic, and the practice of it was widespread, and we have even some documents that talk about protective charms or love potions or spells or incantations, and these things were believed to have brought physical healing. and to deliver people from spirits. But the issue with this is that we never find Jesus using spells, incantations, or magical objects such as amulets, ashes, dog's hair, or incense, such as we do like with other
Mhm.
magicians or such as things that we find all throughout ancient magical literature. And so
Right.
this renders the
He does
thesis.
use weird things like spit
Yeah,
in dirt if the biblical record is
right.
accurate, but it's not a charm or a thing that is meant to have any power on its own, right? Like,
Absolutely.
okay,
Absolutely.
just making sure I got
No,
you
no,
right.
oh no, you are right there. We're right there in the same place.
All right.
Yeah, yeah. So even though Jesus did these things, that's not where the ability, at least from the documents that we have, those things, as Amy said, did not give him the ability to do that. They were used in the process, but it wasn't because of those things. So the first likelihood or group as far as Jesus being an ancient magician, it kind of gets pushed to the wayside just because we have so much literature about what
Mhm.
they use, but then none as far as Jesus ever doing it. That's like, okay, well maybe we can put that to the side. So some people say, fine, if not maybe an ancient magician, then maybe we can go with a Jewish miracle worker, because there were a group of people that were known as these. And so this is another place where we try to draw parallels. And so what they even call charismatic Judaism. And so
Okay.
this approach has, oh yeah. And so this approach has the distinct advantage over the others because it locates Jesus within his Jewish environment. Obviously, that's a plus, right? Jesus is a Jew, Jewish, like charismatic Judaism. Okay, cool. And it allows that Jesus will be less inclined to borrow elements of the pagan religions around him. But
Mhm.
the accounts of these holy men performing miracles, they're really, as if we believe what we have, it's basically their prayers being answered or them praying something, and then it comes to pass. And so
Mhm.
Jewish
Okay.
sources tell us, which we know that Jewish sources would not want to promote Jesus necessarily, or but Josephus in Antiquities, he says that there's quite a believable story about these holy men. And so he talks about
Mm.
a rabbi who prays for rain to fall, and rain comes. And they test it, and they say it's because of his prayer. There's also another story about somebody who had several prayers answered, but he denies being a prophet. And so, but the thing is, with these documentations, as impressive as these stories are, they are the occasional miraculous answer to a prayer, and that's all
Can
they
you
are,
say that
basically
again?
occasional. Like,
I'm sorry, the audio
I'm,
cut out a little bit. Could you say that again?
I'm
As
okay. So
impressive as
Josephus.
these are.
Oh, oh yeah. So okay. So Josephus documents these things, and as impressive as they are, prayers being answered, as they seem to be. That's, I hate to minimize it, but that's all they are. The occasional prayer being answered in the way that it was asked for. And so if you take away something from these people as far as these mighty deeds, like, not a lot is lost on them. They still are who they are. But and also they're only occasional. They only have like maybe one or two like run-outs of these things. Whereas if you take
Mhm.
away the stuff that we have ascribed to Jesus, it's like the whole story, everything about him seems to change. And so,
Okay.
and we have, it's not just the occasional thing. Now,
I
the
want to
one that
I want to
really
bring
sticks
up
out though, oh, go on.
I want to bring up a couple objections just because, they're things that I've thought of and I know other people have thought of it. Um, you know, the Bible is not the whole story of Jesus and his acts. And a lot of people wonder, you know, was there ever a time when something didn't work out in Jesus' favor and someone just didn't record it? Is there a time where he did ask God for something to happen and God was like, no, that's not in my will. Anyway, I'm bringing this up because it is fine, normal, and natural to have these doubts and to have skepticism. And so, that doesn't detract from what we're saying historically right now. It does, of course, detract from our ability to believe in Jesus as Savior, but or as even as well, you'll get into it, but even as somebody with special power or special connection, um, all I have to say is we're not here to prove anything to you. We're here to bring stuff to your attention so that you can think about it, research it, and figure out who Jesus Jesus of Nazareth was to you and for you. So don't get hung up on, well, he can't be the Son of God. We're not there yet. And I'm just bringing that up because I've had to talk to myself about these things and go in order. So anyway, thank you, Mark. Back to you. And then I think we've got Chad over here for a commercial break when you get to a good stopping point.
Okay. We'll talk about Apollonius, and then I think we can get to Chad. But well said. I like how you set that up right there. There's a third person that people say that the people can present as far as saying Jesus was not unique, and that is Apollonius, the wonder worker. And he was Apollonius of Tyana. And so like Jesus, Apollonius is said to have lived in the 1st century. He was said to have healed people, to have exorcised demons, to have perhaps raised a young girl from the dead, and to have appeared to some of his followers after his death. These parallels with Christianity, obviously, they are right there. They're very apparent, and they look quite impressive. But when you look a little closer, the problem or issue with Apollonius, the wonder worker, is that we only have one source for the stories of Apollonius's miracles, and that's from the Greek philosopher Philostratus. And it was written about 125 years or so after Apollonius's death. And so we also have some reason to suspect that there was a financial motive for embellishing his account. And so, so we have 3 different people, whether it was ancient magicians, Jewish miracle workers, or even Apollonius the wonder worker. But there are a couple of things that we see that's like, but there are some major issues there. But let's cut to Chad for a commercial break, and then we'll get into what evidence there is that supports Jesus being a miracle worker.
Okay. Chad, I am adding you to the stream, and I'll give you solo layout, and take it away, my friend.
All right. Before I read the ad, I just want to say that we still have 3 spots open for next week's ad segments. I have maybe 1 left that I can read, but there's still plenty of space if anybody's been enjoying them and wants to submit an idea or wants me to read about their business. But today's video is brought to you by Rio's Chiropractic. Just like our hearts are prone to wander, so also are our lower spines. Whether you have trouble maintaining good posture at your desk job counting temple gold, or you've overstrained yourself trying to bring down 2 pillars of a pagan temple with your own brute strength, Rio's Chiropractor is here to help you put your spine back on the straight and narrow. They've been delivering quality chiropractic care to the Fremont and Tri-City area since 1984, and with all of their combined chiropractic experience, they've realigned more bones than Ezekiel in the Valley of Skeletons. The team at Rio's Chiropractic wants to encourage you on your health journey so that you too can take up your mat and walk. If you contact them before probation closes, they are offering a free combined first-time treatment and new patient exam. The best way to reach out to them is to convince your talking donkey to give them a call. But if your donkey is just as lazy as mine and refuses to even try to take a Rosetta Stone course, then you can always reach out to them at 510-796-7000. Or check out their website at sunrisechiropractic.org, or check them out on Facebook at facebook.com/Rio Sunrise Chiro. Stop hardening your heart and let your lumbar go down to Rio's Chiro.
Oh, thank you so much, Chad. And as Chad mentioned, there are spots left. So if you know somebody who wants to get a little bit extra attention, I will cut and paste these as individual commercials at some point. So check YouTube for that in probably a couple of weeks. And yeah, I just ask that you would see the link below if you or anyone you know wants to promote your Bay Area business or your nationwide business. Thank you so much, Chad. All right, Mark, back to you, my friend.
All righty. So we have seen 3 groups of people that have tried to be presented, or not tried, but people do present regularly as far as saying Jesus was not unique. But we've kind of seen some evidence as to why there's some issues with either putting Jesus in those groups or with comparing Jesus to an individual. So now we want to look at the evidence we have that could support Jesus being a miracle worker or a healer. And there's actually considerable evidence about this, for this. And from non-Jewish sources, there we have the people as far as Jesus' adversaries during his ministry, who did not challenge the fact that he worked miracles, but they attributed them to sorcery. So even the people back then who are like, we have nothing for this Jesus guy, they said he's got some kind of ability. We just don't we just don't like where it's coming from. You have Tacitus, the he's probably the greatest Roman historian that that we know of, and he doesn't mention Jesus's miracles, but he mentions Jesus's ministry. And then next to that, we have Josephus and the Babylonian Talmud. So those do actually mention sources or works by Jesus, being done. And the reason, and some people say, well, these might have been added to later on, but when you look at how it's written, instead of the common Christian verbiage that we have, mighty works, signs, or wonders, they all state it as sorcery or something like that. So even the language that's used back then, it supports it. But and so most scholars agree that the external testimony of Jesus is accurate. And in the case of the Talmud, it corresponds to the attacks by some of the Jewish religious leaders that Jesus is a sorcerer. Because they said he cast out demons by the power of Beelzebul. So between the evidence that's presented in the Gospels, combined with what Josephus says, and combined with what the Talmud says, or all of which all these are written about 25 to 65 years after Jesus' death, compared to the one source for Apollonius being written 125 to 150 years after his death, historians say it is reasonable to support the conclusion that Jesus performed healings that at the very least appeared to be miraculous to the people in his day. And that even if the Jews didn't believe in him, and that even the Jews who did not believe in him, that they don't dispute this fact. All they disputed was the source of Jesus' power. So, so what makes Jesus different, I guess? And maybe not just another magician, maybe not the David Copperfield of his day or the Chris Angel of today, if they were to go back there. And so when you look at all these sources, what happens, Jesus does miracles by his own authority. Jesus was said to have exercised, healed, and raised the dead by his own power and by his own word.
Compared to what? Compared to people conjuring other spirits or powers, or?
Oh yeah, so when you look at biblical sources, people either asking God to do something, or people, as far as magicians, they will call on somebody else, maybe other deities or do it in other people's names, and they would say, okay, then basically by this source or whatever else, I want to do that. So like you said, conjuring up others, whereas Jesus never had to conjure up anything.
Okay.
It was done by his own authority. Jesus' miracles, they have the purpose not of showing his glory, but of actualizing what he was saying was the coming of the kingdom, or the coming of the kingdom of God. And so Jesus, as you know, was preaching about something that was different. And so Jesus's miracles or signs or wonders, however you want to describe them, and we'll see about that later on, they were done so, and to actualize something better on earth for people at that time and for us now. And basically he was saying this is done to vanquish evil, or this is done to get rid of evil, whatever else. So Jesus does it by his own authority. His miracles are done with the purpose of of not showing his glory, but of trying to usher in the message he's preaching. And number 3, Jesus is not a wonder worker or a magician in either the pagan or Jewish sense. This is one of the things that makes Jesus different. Some people have suggested, I think it was Rudolph Bultmann, who is a liberal theologian. He was saying that that he did these miracles to kind of compete with the so-called pagan miracle workers. But the gospel writers, and it was like, okay, yeah, because lots of people back then were supposed to have the ability to do things, and so it was, like I said, common or accepted that people had these abilities. And so he's okay. Well, Jesus, if he did something, it was to compete with them. But when we see Jesus, as far as the best sources that we have to talk about, to give us Jesus's, thinking or why he did or did not do certain things, we see that whenever he was asked to do something just to show off, that he
Mm-hmm.
refused to do so. Whether it was, Herod asking for something, or if it was the Pharisees asking, or when he is, in the desert being tempted, whatever else, or every time he's asked to do something just to show off, or no for no other reason than just to show he can, he says, no,
Mm-hmm.
that's not what I'm here for. And so,
That's interesting.
um,
But some who read the Bible might think back to Moses and the story in Exodus about Moses asking Pharaoh to let the Israelites go someplace to worship their God, to renew their spiritual vigor and commitment. And Pharaoh shuts them down. Finally, Moses says, "Well, we're gonna take everybody and leave." And Pharaoh wants a lot of signs, and
right.
they go head to head. According to the Bible, they go head to head. Moses doing things that look just like the other magicians' things. But Moses doesn't ever say, no, I refuse to compete. I'm not going to do a sign or whatever. So comparing Moses to Jesus, I mean, I guess in our idea, in our Christian world, Jesus doesn't have to compete with Moses, but it doesn't look like there's anything that would be wrong about competing with other magicians to show off a little bit. It just ultimately doesn't make Pharaoh want to let the people go. It doesn't result in anything. And maybe Jesus was trying to make that point. I don't know.
No, that is a great point. I'm undoing my camera to see if I'm still pixelated. If I am, I'm going to turn it back off.
Did you see Bud's comment? He was missing your face. So no, I think it's a lot clearer. I think we got priority or something. So keep it on.
Okay, if it changes, just let me know. And we'll take it off again.
All
So
right.
the fourth thing that makes Jesus different is that Jesus combines teaching and miracles. So unlike the pagan or the Jewish miracle workers of the time, Jesus would integrate, teaching into his miraculous deeds. He didn't simply heal the sick, which is a good purpose in itself, but he would include lessons about faith, the forgiveness of sins, seeing through the eyes of faith, giving thanks, the kingdom of God, salvation to Gentiles. But the Jewish miracle workers, in contrast, they were not portrayed this way at all, even by their own sources. So
How are they
that's,
portrayed?
they were, I mean, even then they were just portrayed as, look, we did good things, but kind of that's it. Like, I mean, there's no reason you ascribe to them, or sometimes it might be to the good things that they did were not really shown to have. Amie, you're gonna be able to put up that slide that I don't want. There is no good reason that's really given as to the miracles that were done or performed, or the mighty deeds performed by other Jewish.
Do
I'm
we
sorry?
know? Do we have any sources? Sorry if this stumps
Oh, no.
you, just say, like, let's research it. But do we have any sources of people who are doing this for just a few shekels? Like, step right up and see, just like the David Copperfields and the Chris Angels that we've been talking about. Was this a money-making industry? I know healing
Well, it
was.
could have been. Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess you have Simon the Sorcerer, right? Which,
Oh,
I mean, but that's so he would have been somebody that, I'm in it for the money.
do we
And
have time to talk about him at the end? Have you guys
I
heard
think
of
so.
Simon the Sorcerer? If we have time at the end, I want to bring that up and add him in if he's not already in your presentation.
Okay.
Anyway, sorry for the interruption. Let's go back.
Oh, no worries. So no good reason really is attributed other than sometimes they want to do something nice, but Jesus always ties it to teaching. But the fifth thing that makes Jesus different is that faith and freedom are, I guess it's actually the faith and freedom of the recipient is integral to Jesus's miraculous deed. Unlike the pagan or the Jewish miracle workers of the time, Jesus used miracles to both teach about and call forth faith. Often we see it repeated go now, your faith has saved you. Or do you believe I can do this? And the recipient was moved beyond the physical healing to a faith that would actually give them something like a deeper hope or something, I would say. Christians would describe it as salvation.
Sure.
So now the part that I really want to get to, is this historically reliable? Because it's like, okay, that sounds good. But is this like, and so before going into pastoral ministry, I studied history. That was like, I was finding myself as a historian. That was where that was my first degree. Whatever else. So I'm like, okay.
You love cardigans, and that's probably why you could imagine yourself as a historian.
I love cardigans, and that's why I can imagine myself as a historian. That is.
Mark has a really nice sweater collection. Hey, Mark, before you go into the history, wait, do you have one with patches on your sleeves? Just one?
I don't have patches. Not quite. That's the next level up. So I'm hoping to do that in the future. So I can then, I feel like that's safe for actually when you have a PhD in history. Then at that point, you can get the patches.
All right. I wanted to go back to Taylor's question here. I think she jumped on a little bit late. So before you get into the historicity, would you please address, Taylor, where'd you go? What was your question? Oh, she wanted to know if Jesus would be considered a mystic. I know it's a little bit of a play on words and you can take things different ways, but did you come across any of that in your study?
No, the mystics, if I'm not mistaken, they came around later in history.
Okay.
So
it's actually a name of a group of people. It's not just like, like we think about everybody falls under this.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. So I would say no. From the things I've seen or researched or studied, I would say I don't believe Jesus would fall under that category.
Okay. I know that there are some people who like to talk about Jesus as part of the Essenes or like a magic mushroom cult. Pretty sure I saw a couple of things on that this past year. So it's interesting stuff, and everyone kind of wants to claim him and kind of doesn't want to claim him and has, a different explanation. But yeah, I will say, I just want to say this one thing is that there are so many Gnostic kind of faith breakoffs from things, right? What is it? I don't know how to say the word. Jewish Kabbalism? Is that how you say it? The Kabbalism? Anyway. And if you read historical accounts on what the Essenes were doing from Josephus, there was some magic, some conjuring, some works of that kind of thing. And so you could see how people would try to lump Jesus in with this group or another, not really knowing what's going on, not having some of these, measured views. So Mark, back to your point, and I want to ask Sandy's question for you, and then you can respond as you have a chance. Didn't he also use miracles to teach, model social justice, i.e. revealing the life of the Samaritan woman and honoring her in the process?
I would absolutely agree with that. No, absolutely. The short and easy answer, Sandy Cologne, is you're absolutely right. And there's actually a presentation. Well, there's one thing mentioned about the Samaritan woman yesterday, and we may, as we go forward, have some things as far as the social justice aspect of Jesus in our next 4 studies, or maybe in our study coming up in, I want to say February or March. Actually, I don't know, but no, Sandy Cologne, yes, that is absolutely spot on. So, and thank you for raising that. But like I said, the part is almost like the main part of the presentation that really excited me was is this historically reliable? Can we actually, take out all the faith stuff, take out whatever else? Like, can we what does history say? What do historians say? And so Amie mentioned it in our very first presentation. as far as multiple attestations. And so the presence of Jesus' miracles in all independent sources, they exemplified that criterion. There are a couple of things that historians want to see when it comes to proving something historically. And the first thing is, are there multiple accounts of this thing? And so it's the principle that the more often a story or saying appears in independent traditions, then that's the more probable that of its historicity. And so, but without going too deep into the weeds, before the extensive use of like different forms of biblical criticism or literary criticism, which is literary form, redaction, there are different kinds of things when it comes to criticism. It was commonly thought that each gospel was a separate tradition, and therefore multiple attestations consisted merely in repetition of the four gospels. But over time, as different forms of criticism were basically established or accepted, people could no longer just accept this thing like, okay, hey, we just have four people kind of repeating the same thing. Long story short, like I said, not want to go too deep into the weeds, but you first have what's considered the gospel or the witness of Mark. That comes first, and then after that you have Matthew and Luke, and they have their own sources, and then they also share a common source called Q, which is basically just like, it's called like the source or quell, and Mark didn't have that source. And then after that you have the joining gospel or John, and so you have five basically independent traditions for the five gospels. I mean, for the four gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, as well as Q. And so basically what happens is when you have these five different things that are established, it's like, okay, hey, we have different sources and different things that we can use to prove or to say, hey, more likely than not, this happened. The second thing, though, that history looks at is the Jewish attack on against Jesus' miracles. And so basically, historical scholars said, okay, is there any room for embarrassment? And so what happens is that back then, you would not, if you were an evangelist, you wouldn't put something in your writing that was embarrassing unless it was true. And so, if it was something that didn't line up with your thinking apologetically, or if it was, unappealing, you'd probably leave it out. If it was disrespectful to Jesus or disrespectful to the apostles, you wouldn't make it in. So back then they said, okay, if you have embarrassing things in the text or in the story, then more likely than not, this makes us believe that this could be true. And so I know an evangelist. A good friend of mine is an evangelist. Her name is Amie. And I don't believe that most evangelists would sit here and have something embarrassing, in a story or a statement, unless it was true, something that went against what they are teaching or believing. So the third thing then that historical scholars use to assess, how reliable is this, is the uniqueness of Jesus' miracles. Do they exemplify coherence with the unique style of Jesus? So basically the first three things we have are the multiple attestations. Is there any room for embarrassment? And is there coherence? And what we find is that a lot of the expressions, the attitudes, and the actions of Jesus, that they depart significantly from the people around where he lived. And so he works. So there's uniqueness, but there's uniqueness in his ministry, but it's coherent in that with everything else we learn about him, this guy's just different. This guy does things to his own, to his own beat. So now we move to, how do modern day scholars look at, okay, then how can we trust, what's reliable from back then? And so basically is the presence of Semitisms, basically like Jewish thought. And what that means is, as we know, the New Testament Gospels, or what Protestants or Christians are called the New Testament, they were written in Greek. But the oral and written traditions underlying many of these narratives were formulated in Aramaic. So if these traditions that underlie the text from Aramaic can be identified in the Greek text, it shows that there was a probable origin within the Palestinian community near the time of Jesus. And I don't know if you're still with me.
So does that
if that
mean
makes
it's
sense.
like a simple way would be like it's cross-referenced with other local stuff and that strengthens it?
Yeah, like, look, this came from something earlier. So this came from a source that we had closer to the time of Jesus. And so when you
Hmm.
see something that's written strangely in Greek, normally you find that it's a very common Aramaic saying. And so and at this time, the Greeks would not have wanted to leave room for anything that was Aramaic or whatever else. They would have just put it in Greek. So yeah.
Hmm.
But you said it
Okay.
well. It's basically it's a cross reference.
Okay.
The presence of identifiable names and places that can be checked by the readers and hearers in Jesus' time. Many
Sure.
of the gospels of the news that we have, they include a standard form. And so uh, those forms tend to avoid specific details about people or places or times. But when that standard form goes beyond that, and they actually include somebody's name, Jairus, or they include a particular place like a widow of Nain, or they,
Hmm.
anything like that, more likely than not, history, these are historians,
Hmm.
not Christian historians. They say more likely than not
Right.
it's true because those details would have been held on to over time. But no one's going to add a detail later on about somebody. They might simply
Right.
hold on to a detail.
Like when you're
But yeah,
making a
so
resume, you put references in there that people can call and check up on. You're in trouble if you put a reference that's not checkable.
absolutely. And no one's going to add a ref. That's said perfectly. I'm not going to even add to that. That's the perfect way to say it. No one's going to add something that can't be checked. And the last thing is coherence again. Is there coherence with the Palestinian customs during the time of Jesus? And so the environment in the early church became more and more detached from the characteristics and beliefs of Palestine in the time of Jesus. So by the time the Gospels are written, a lot of the things of Palestine were kind of obscure to Christians. But the gospel narratives preserve not only the customs and actions of Palestine, of Palestinian Judaism, but also expressions such as son of David or rabbi or he is a prophet. And so those things would have been done away with by the time the gospels are written. So I know we kind of, I'm looking at the time and I know we had a couple of questions. So I wanted to kind of race to a close, but ultimately what I'm hoping to present, what I hope I've made a case for today is that one, even non-Christians, whether historians, whatever else, they admit that Jesus' ministry had to include something like miracles or healings. Josephus says this, Tacitus says this, even people today, they're saying that there's too much evidence to support that Jesus did something that was different, that made a difference in lives of people. History has come up with ways to conclude that it is more reasonable to believe that than not to believe that something happened whenever Jesus would come around. This is what history says. So I would say ultimately that Jesus seems to have earned his reputation as a miracle worker or a healer. And the rate at which Jesus did these things and the way in which Jesus did these things, it wasn't like anybody before him or anybody during his time. And honestly, anybody today. And so Jesus, I would say this guy's just different. Jesus is somebody who can really, like I said, as history attests, be worthy of the reputation that he has gleaned as far as a miracle worker or a healer.
Okay. I think there's some YouTube chats in the private comments. I just want to make sure you guys know that you can send public and private comments. And then also I wanted to let you guys know that those of you who are registered, you have a link in your email where you can join us in the green room. You can come kind of backstage and I'll see you lined up under my screen. And if you want to ask a question live, I haven't talked a whole lot about that capability, but I want to remind you of it because we think that it's fun to have other people's faces besides our own on this. And we do want to open it up. If you're registered, you're welcome, not just this time, but every meeting. And now we're kind of getting to know people a little bit. So maybe you're more comfortable with that. And then if not, you can keep chatting away. It's sometimes hard for me to get to every one of the comments and put them up on the screen. So if you want to say something, if you have a comment, if you want to add in, whether you're a skeptic or you have support for these ideas, we would love to hear from you. So keep an eye on the links that come to you from now on. There'll be a link to watch or share, and then a link to actually join us in the green room. So I feel like we trust each other now. So I'll start to share that a little bit more. Yeah. Anybody else have questions? Because we've got a couple minutes left.
I'm looking at Bud's comments.
Yeah, I thought they were worthy of tossing up there. Very interesting. But you must be sitting at a keyboard. There's no way you could type all that out on your phone. So we appreciate your getting in there. Sandy, we appreciate you getting in there. Who else commented today? Taylor, thank you so much. Just kind of scrolling through, but anyway, we appreciate you guys. Mark, I really appreciate your research and your scholarship. I want to make these notes available to people if they would like them. Is that okay with you?
That is.
Okay, I can send these out. Is trust the same as faith? Bud asks. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some overlap there, Bud. What do you think? What do you think, Mark?
Oh, I would say yes. I know faith can be described as a couple of things, whether it's a faith tradition or whatever else, but in the way that Bud is asking it, I would definitely say that trust and faith go hand in hand, and that they could be used interchangeably.
Yeah. Unless there's a particular
I think
case.
you exercise faith or trust. I think you're exercising faith right now that that chair will hold you, or that you're exercising faith right now that the stream won't cut out. So I think people, what we sometimes call trust, yeah, it is faith, whatever else. But yeah, no, definitely.
Hey, whether you have a question that pertains or does not, we'd love to hear it. The best way you can get those questions to me, for me or for Mark, or for just a discussion group is through my Gmail address, which is askachristianfriend@gmail.com. We'd love to hear more from you guys. If I end this live stream now, it will be the shortest one we've had. I would like to put that on record. So we're going to bow out. Before we do, I want to, for those of you who came in late, or for those of you who are watching this not live, I do want to go through those announcements one more time. Everyone, feel free to get out of town. Just wanted to remind you that we will be having printables that go along with every lesson. You can register. Once you do that, nothing happens to that except I'm able to send you emails and put you into our drawing. Oh my goodness, I didn't do the drawing. Okay. Looking at these reminded me I did not break for the drawing. Here is our upcoming schedule, starting up again next Thursday the 12th, going through Sunday the 15th. You'll notice the first two nights are at 6:30 p.m. And then on Saturday and Sunday, we do 9:30 a.m. just because the weekend schedule, nobody wants to hang out online with us at 6:30 p.m. Unfortunately, we don't have that kind of sway. And then coming in spring 21, we've got a new book club / Bible discussion. We would love to have you. All right. Now, I better end with this drawing. As you guys know, if you don't want the prizes your name is drawn for, you don't have to have them. Do nothing. If you do want to have them, got to email me, askachristianfriend@gmail.com, so that I can get the prizes to you. All right. The first... Oh, shoot. We were going to talk about Simon the Sorcerer if we had time. That's what we were going to do. All right. The first thing I want to send you is another book. I mentioned it yesterday. It's called Life in Year One. Super good book, super fun. And it's a great read. Goes to Marina. Marina, feel free to email me so I can send you this ebook. Now, you guys are going to love this. The next one is a little Bob Ross paint by the numbers. Want to make sure that you have something to do. And by the way, if you don't like these, you can still give them to somebody else. It is time for holiday shopping. Bob Ross goes to invest7@gmail.com. Invest7@gmail.com. So if you are Invest7, Bob Ross is waiting. And now last for today. Those of you who like doing stuff in the kitchen, Thanksgiving's coming up, little seasonal cheer. Got this sweet set. Oriole Sabate. Oriole, I know that you are an excellent cook. I do not know that actually, but I hope you will enjoy these. Get them on screen. This baking set. All right, that's it for today. Thank you so much, folks. Send your questions to askachristian@gmail.com. Oh, askachristianfriend@gmail.com. And we'll see you next time, next Thursday. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Oh, Malika Padilla, probably Padilla, says shalom. And Sandy says, thank you for this great discussion. And Bud says, has Mark performed any miracles?
Only getting Amie to be my friend.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's not a miracle. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Chad. Thank you for joining in our discussion. We love when you comment and talk to us. We know it gets a little chatty, but it's fun. Thank you, Taylor /FBI. We'll see you guys Thursday at 6:30 p.m. Appreciate it.